I now call the May 8th, 2017 special council meeting to order. Would council members please denote your presence by depressing the yes switch?
All council members are present.
Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please read the consent resolution by title only.
A resolution authorizing an underground right-of-way easement with Rocky Mountain Power to install electrical service underground to the former K-Larks Gymnastics Building at 355 South Ash Street.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolution just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Johnson. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
The next meetings of the City Council meeting will be a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, May 15th, 2017 in the council chamber room, a work session to be held at 4:30 Tuesday, May 22nd in the council meeting room. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into the regular scheduled work session.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Morgan, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Please cast your vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passes.
This meeting is adjourned. I think we're doing it here, guys. We're just going to watch it here, yeah. Or not watch it, but hear the presentation here. Mr. Clokey.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Your Honor, Council, I'm here to present to you a draft of the City of Casper downtown parking study. So what I'm going to do is, since we have 20 minutes, I'm going to take 5 minutes to go over the high points, and then I'm sure you have lots of questions, and we'll take, and we'll go straight to questions after that. So first of all, just a refresher on the study area. So it encompasses the entire urban center of Casper, but also including, we're also talking about the downtown business district in blue, and then the old Yellowstone district in green. So first of all, what did we learn? We put together two committees, one technical consisting of staff from multiple city departments and from the DDA. And we also put together a committee consisting of downtown business owners and property owners. Some of the things that we learned from those committees is, I won't talk about things that you already know, but I think one thing that was interesting from the technical committee is that one thing that was surprising to us was that enforcement could be a lot better the way that it is right now. Right now we have a collection rate of parking fines at 62%. Last year, roughly $80,000 was fined, only roughly $50,000 was recovered. And so that's one thing that we learned just when talking from the police department, is that that's something we really need to improve on, not just in our technology that the police department uses, but also in the way that our collections process through finance. Talking with our stakeholder committee, I think the number one thing that we learned was that the parking garage needs to be better managed. It needs some investment. It needs better signage. And overall, everyone wants to see the parking garage be utilized better. And everyone's happy that we have that asset, but we know that we can use it in a better way and manage it better in the future. Overall priorities, though, coming from these committees and from outreach to the public, was that we need a more consistent and integrated approach to parking. Right now, we have the police department doing patrol on the street. We have community development managing parking in the Old Yellowstone district, and we have the DDA managing parking over here. It's kind of all over the place. Another thing that we learned was that parking options just need to be easier to understand. Signage needs to be more consistent. Branding needs to be more consistent. People also want to see that we invest in or provide more incentives to use the parking garage. Again, we know we have this great asset, but we're not utilizing it to its full potential. And again, enhancing enforcement. That didn't just come from the technical committee. It also came from the public, downtown business owners. Downtown business owners recognize that we've really ramped up and done a better job at enforcing, but we know we could do better. And finally, providing pedestrian enhancements. I was surprised that this actually came out from the public, but we heard a lot from the public who said that parking would be better if it was safer to walk, and if it was safer in the parking garage, and if they felt like it was more, our downtown was a more inviting place. Other things that we learned from data collection is that we have just over 8,000 parking spaces downtown in an Old Yellowstone district. So this is on-street, off-street, private, and public. At our best, in our busiest part of the urban center, which is downtown, we are utilizing it at about a 45% rate. So that means on an average day between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m., only about 45% of our spaces are being used downtown. Industry standard is 80%. We're also seeing just over 2.5 vehicles of turnover on some specific blocks that were observed in the middle of the week on an average day. So we could use more turnover on our parking spaces. You might have noticed in the report also that in a single 5-hour period, it was observed that only there were 20 vehicle violations, and that's quite a bit. So we know we need to do better enforcing, and what we have going on really isn't working too well. So overall, to sum it up, I think we've determined kind of what some of us had theorized in the beginning, is that we don't necessarily have a parking supply problem, but it's just a management problem. So some of our initial recommendations, there are 11 key recommendations. I'll just touch on 2 right now. Number 1 is that we know parking management is kind of spread out throughout different agencies. The number 1 recommendation is to bring that parking program into the city and hire a parking manager and establish a parking advisory committee and work initially just in the short term with a parking management company that can kind of get our parking program up to speed just in the short term. Number 2 key strategy I think is just the investment of technology for paid on-street and off-street parking. So that means talking about meters, and we're talking about better technology for the garage and some of our publicly owned surface lots. You will note in the report, the report is not saying to invest in parking meters tomorrow. It explicitly says this takes a lot of planning and public outreach, and it takes a lot of working with downtown business owners to determine if this is the right step. But that is one of the main initial recommendations, is just to explore this. With that, like I said, I won't go into every key strategy. I do want to open it up for questions because I know we're limited on time, and I know you have lots of questions. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, also take comments or any concerns you want to express.
Charlie.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Aaron, we've been hearing for years that the problem we have downtown is that we have employees that are monopolizing the parking spaces for the entire day.
Yep.
And that those spaces are no longer available then for customers. And we're trying to handle that with the old-fashioned method of basically marking a car and seeing if that mark is still there 2 hours later. Is that correct?
Correct.
So all the reading I've done on downtown parking says it has to have some kind of metering system for there to be turnover of the spaces. Have we done any cost analysis in terms of what the payback time might be on a system that would be state-of-the-art and meter the parking?
Yeah, good question, because that is a huge upfront capital expense. But in the report, you might see that there is a detailed budget for that investment, and the initial capital for on-street parking for roughly just under 500 spaces, which is kind of the bulk of our centralized hotspots, would be roughly 500 grand, and then another 80 grand for installation and just getting the technology up and running. It is estimated that those spaces would be paid off after 2 years. It's estimated those on-street meters would bring in roughly $450,000 to $500,000 a year. And that was being conservative with the utilization rate too.
So follow up if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we can certainly do it from the punishment standpoint. But the idea I had, and I don't know if you could give me your off-the-cuff reaction to this. How do you think it would work if all the employees downtown were given a sticker by their employer with a number on it, and in some random schedule, we had some kind of a lottery for those vehicles that are in the parking garage, so that there would be some kind of a incentive, because all the research says that people will work harder for the chance to win something than they will for the thing itself. And I just wonder if you think something like that, where there's actually an incentive for people to use the garage versus a penalty for staying on the street.
Sure. Is that assuming that there isn't enough spaces for all of those employees?
Well, I don't know what the capacity, how much the garage would
that's
actually
the big
handle.
Question. I suppose, I think that's a great idea. I think the key is to get those individuals, because they are long-term parkers, to park in the garage. And so whether you do that with giving them a variable rate system where they might pay $30 a month for just a flat pass to park in any spot, or if somebody wants to pay more and they get a reserved spot, they can pay $60 a month. Give them options, I think, is the most important part. But yeah, to have a lottery system where, hey, maybe 10 people this month will get free parking this month.
They have to be in the garage.
They have to be in the garage. I think it's something worth entertaining.
Other questions? Dallas?
Why isn't the parking ticket fees collected?
The biggest reason is, so at this moment, and I know Sergeant Jones can speak more to this than I can, but when a ticket is issued, they have 60 days to pay it. If they don't pay it within 60 days, then the fine is essentially dismissed. And there's no follow-up. It's not sent to a collections agency.
So we just don't collect it? They don't pay it, we don't collect it?
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
Now, for 60% of the cases, those are paid. And there is follow-up for tickets that, if an individual is delinquent on more than one ticket, there is follow-up after 12 days from our finance department. But, so that gets us to where we're at.
So if we put in parking meters and they don't adhere to the parking meters and they get a ticket for not adhering to the parking meters, we're in the same boat?
I think one of the things that we need to address throughout this process is ensuring that we can collect those fines. I think we do have options. Right now, administratively, it's treated one way. But if I know other cities send these fines to collection agencies, or there might be other options. I think that's something that needs to be explored. I think one of the major issues with our current system is that our parking systems aren't attached to the owner of the vehicle. So there's no record of, the individual gets the ticket, but doesn't have their license plate number or their vehicle type. It's not attached to that specific vehicle, is my understanding.
Jesse.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Aaron. On that same topic, I guess, have you spoken with the city attorney's office to maybe see if we could change the ordinance? I don't want to see anybody get arrested or have a warrant out for not paying their parking fine, but at the same time, they had a parking violation, and I think they're obligated, to pay that. So, what can we do apart from that specifically that you would suggest?
I think, working with our finance division and our legal department is probably our next steps, now that we have kind of come to the conclusion that this is one of the major issues in our parking program.
Okay, thanks.
Chris.
I can give you a little bit of history, though. The parking is a headache. First of all, it's not a major crime. It's a crime of inconvenience. And so what happens is the registered owner of the vehicle gets associated with the parking ticket. And oftentimes that's not the same person. It used to be that person would end up with a warrant. I can remember, holidays and situations like that where somebody's got a warrant and they get arrested. You can't say no, because the warrant's pretty clear. The judge says you are hereby commanded. And so you realize that I don't want to make a ridiculous arrest. So that's probably why the enforcement techniques were amended. I think this is going to be a much broader conversation. Ways to recoup that cost, and they've been explored before, would be putting a boot on a car. Now, do we want to go that far? Because then you're going to pay the money before you get the boot off the car. But then somebody has to manage all that. So I would just say we need to have a conversation on how to recoup those fines. People do need to, follow the parking regulations just because it keeps things flowing properly. But then also remember that not let this turn into some major issue in our mind, because it's not. It's a parking issue. In my day, it was $5 or $15, if I remember right, unless it was handicap. So recouping the fines is difficult. Finding a balance between what's right and what's written down is difficult, and the ways to do that. So there's probably a lot of mechanisms out there that will take us a long time to sort out before we decide to take that step where we're mandating that return on it.
Mike.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I think that, what's happened in the past, and the reason that those things are just being written off is I think that the city had the experience that, sometimes trying to collect unpaid fines is just a very frustrating, difficult thing, and you end up spending dollars to chase fines. In your guys' experience, this can't be your first rodeo in dealing with this kind of a question. Is our experience here unique in that regard? Are we better, worse, or the same as everybody else anywhere else? And I always forget to turn that thing on.
Your Honor, to answer.
I'm not honorable anymore.
Okay. All right.
You're addressing the mayor. Thank you. I got confused.
Yeah, Councilman Huber, thank you.
You're still honorable.
No.
I would say that Casper is not unique in this issue. Compared to, we do know that we could do better though. Compared to industry standard, best practices, generally 80% is a good capture rate. We're running at about 62%. So we know we can do better. I can't say there's a single city out there who has a perfect record, though.
Okay, thank you. So we're not as bad as it might look, but we're still not doing too good.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dallas.
2 questions. Does anybody use the boot anymore? Or are we giving the boot to the boot?
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, second question is, so when I hear you say that only 45% of our parking is being used downtown, to key it into another issue is that I guess parking isn't the issue for the food trucks.
Parking is not the issue.
Thank-
Yeah.
There's plenty of parking is what you're saying.
When it comes to food trucks, I mean, food trucks is more than parking.
Right,
That's
but
what you're
I'm just isolating the parking component to it, which is what we heard, oh, they're taking our parking places. But what you're telling me is there's plenty of parking, and that really isn't the issue.
That's my interpretation that I think there's more to it than just parking.
Right. That's there's more components to it, I agree. But parking, lack of parking really isn't the major component.
That's tough to say explicitly because while we are looking at this in the aggregate, there are hotspots and there are choke points in our system. To tell somebody on 2nd and Center Street that there's plenty of parking in downtown, it's going to be different than if you tell somebody on the edge of town, downtown, the same thing, because their experience is very different.
But if I heard you right, the downtown, only 45% of the parking is utilized.
Right, yeah, on an average afternoon.
And I do realize that there will be another conversation about the food trucks, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to put you on the spot about that. I'm
No,
just isolating it to parking. Thank you.
Mike and then Charlie.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you just commented sort of on the side about what I was going to ask about, when you said that the idea about, well, you tell somebody that's on 2nd Street, oh, there's plenty of parking if you go 2 blocks away. I know when the mall moved in here, and the downtown merchant back then, Dean Sersland, had a really good, successful store here, and people complained about parking down here, so he goes out to the mall, and he did some research about how far, and it seemed to him that an average customer would park from a given store and walk how far to get to that store, parking out at the mall, or parking at Hilltop Shopping Center, or, Walmart or somewhere like that, and compared that to how far they'd have to park to get to his store downtown. And even on a congested, crowded day, you could park closer to his store downtown than you could out there. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on that any more than you have? Or?
It is a fascinating paradox, I would say. It's all about perception.
We're all people, and we have weird ideas. Or?
It's about perception, I suppose. I can't say, yeah, but I would agree. We've found the same thing in our research, in talking with individuals.
And that's just one of those things that people are people, and they.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I would say that the perception is that if you're parking in front of a building, no matter how large that building is or how large that parking lot is, it's going to feel like you were able to park in front of that building. But parking 2 blocks away feels very different, even if it is a shorter walk.
Well, I was hoping that you had a rabbit to pull out.
Yeah, well, I would say that's kind of gets to the heart of why we're talking about pedestrian amenities, is that when we're talking about parking, we're talking more than just storage for your vehicles. It's about transportation. And people are more likely to park farther away if they feel comfortable walking in our downtown, and if they feel comfortable parking in our parking garage. And so by providing a safe walking environment, and creating a more comfortable atmosphere, you will see people that are more willing to walk. That's our theory.
Charlie.
Well, actually, my question was similar to what you were just talking about, but because I think the whole problem we have is this perception that people have that if I go to Walmart, I'll find a space with no problem. If I go downtown, who knows? I'll probably drive around, and I don't want to do that. So the data says that spaces are available. What is the number one thing that you think we can do to change that perception that downtown is inaccessible?
I think there's always going to be, if you look at any vibrant neighborhood you go to in any city, I don't think anyone will say that it's the most accessible. But what they will say is that there's a reason to go there still. No one ever went to a neighborhood because it had enough parking. The reason people go downtown is because you're giving them a reason to go downtown that no other place in Casper can offer. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think we can always make the parking situation easier for those who are trying to just get in and out, or those who are depending on, as long as we're providing options and making it easier for them, that's the best that we can do. Even Times Square, downtown Denver, Salt Lake, there's always people who are going to say that it's difficult to find parking, but you got to give them a reason to go there. And do your best to make it easy for them to park. And that's why in this plan we've explored several different, it's about options and addressing the different types of parkers. You have long-term parkers and short-term parkers, and you have handicap parkers, and parkers who are shoppers versus employees. Providing options is most important and making it easy for all those different categories of parkers. I hope that answers your question.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Thanks. Did it ever come up that the DDA could possibly take over parking management and perhaps even enforcement, since they're part of the garage too, managing that?
Yeah, that option was explored. I think the ultimate idea behind the recommendation to bring it into the city is that is to bring in everything under one house, because the DDA won't be doing, is currently not doing on-street parking, and or on-street parking enforcement, in needing to coordinate between finance, the police department, and current functions of community development. It was felt that it was just, the number one recommendation as it came out was to bring it into the city. But yes, it was explored.
Okay, thanks. The only reason I asked was just because, bringing in a new parking management team and everything like that when we're trying to figure out where we can ease the burden on the general fund. So, thank you.
If I may add to that, Your Honor, I think that I'd like to express that this is just a draft, so we're still waiting on comment from, this was presented to you all first and foremost. It's been available to the public since Thursday when your packets were presented. And so I wouldn't say anything is final. We're still waiting on comment from the DDA, from these city departments that could be affected by these recommendations, from the public, from you all. So I would say that we're still considering options.
Thanks.
Chris.
I will be straight to the point. We do not need a parking management company. We do not need a parking manager. We have a police chief knows completely how to handle parking. We need to provide him with the CSOs to be able to do that on a regular basis, on a consistent basis. They aren't there now. It has to fall under the police department. And the issue is, in order to give a citation, they're going to have to be at least special municipal officers, which they can't be granted through the DDA in any real mechanism. So we have everything we need in place to be able to handle this. We just need to make sure that we properly equip them to do that.
Any other questions for Aaron? Yeah.
So no action items necessary at this point in time because we're going to get a finalized report, and at that point, we can decide if there's something we actually need to do.
Correct. If you have any additional comments, questions, this is a good time to pass them along, and we will try to answer those questions and incorporate any concerns or comments that you have in the final draft.
I do have one question I'd like to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are you going to make any comments about the food trucks through this parking study?
The food truck opinion that was provided to this council will be included as an appendix, and it will be referenced. But it won't, addressing food trucks won't be incorporated into the bulk recommendations since that was already provided.
This parking really isn't a problem.
Well, parking is a problem, just a management problem.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Council, I had one quick thing before. We received a letter from Servants United about their prayer, or their community prayer luncheon Thursday, May 17th, and they've only heard back tentatively from the vice mayor. If you're interested, they want us to RSVP by the 7th. I don't know if we got all these letters. I don't remember getting a letter, but if you did, you did. So if you're interested in going to that, RSVP by May 7th. Is anybody interested in that besides Charlie?
I think it's a great idea, but I'm
I
scheduled.
know you're out of Mayo, so. Okay, so there it is. So for the people in the chambers here, just to let you know that this may kind of catch you off guard, we've decided to only do the first two parts of our agenda in order for the council to attend the Pack the Park event in support of the police department. And so we'll be going to Conwell Park here in a few minutes. And so I encourage anybody to go to that if they can make it to it. So anyway, thank you so much, guys.
Could we have a moment of silence on behalf of our officer?
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.